We have enough to get started. Thanks everyone for being here. Newsworthy, I guess, today. We have a really full agenda. When we get to some issues, they're really going to end up being more information only without the Q&A, because we're going to do some small group Q&A sessions for a couple agenda items, but I'll get to that once we're there. Let's kick it off with operations update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hersey, and appreciate you sharing that we do have a full agenda today. So, you all know the recent cold weather that we had, particularly Monday, can be challenging for buses. I'm happy to report we didn't have any that didn't crank. What we did have were, we found out we needed to follow up and emphasize and recommunicate cranking procedures for buses, which may sound not very important, but it really is. There's a specific procedure to make sure those big diesels crank and turn over. So we sent that information out and forwarded it to our drivers, but I think all in all, even with the cold weather, we did okay with the transportation side. Bus driver recruitment does remain strong. We meet pretty regularly. We do have a decent backlog of candidates waiting on training or their CDL or scheduling for the bus class. We're still hovering around 600 drivers. I've been in contact numerous times with our new Senior Director of Transportation, Jason Tompkins. As you all know, he'll be starting with us the first week in January. I think it's the 5th maybe. And we're real excited about that, and he is ready to come down here and hit the ground running and get going, so we're excited with that. Moving to M&O, while we did have some issues on Monday, obviously HVAC issues, and some frozen pipes throughout the district, we did pretty well, I think. We've also had several power outages that affected schools as well. Obviously, we don't have any control over that, but through a combination of staffing in-house and contracted vendors, we got the most of the problems in a timely manner. Staffing levels for M&O remain about the same with the current positions that are allocated. And then last week we had a near miss at Dillard Drive. I hesitated to share this, but I thought it was important based on our conversations. We had an issue in the auditorium with some water infiltration. As we dug deeper, no pun intended, we found out that we had some problems with some piping that also affected the elementary school. They're one central plant for both of those schools. Through a combination of staff from M&O and Life Cycle, we got it taken care of. Fortunately, we had our contractor on site doing similar work, so we got that taken care of, working on a permanent fix for that. And then moving on to child nutrition, the last category I'll share information about. I know you all got this information in the board retreat materials, but we didn't get a chance to present it, so I wanted to note that our breakfast and lunch participation are up. The numbers are up for the first quarter of this year, and that's pretty cool. Also in January, I don't know if you looked at your board information, but we'll begin our flavor labs. And this is an effort that CNS is putting together to solicit input and feedback from our end users, which are the students. And so we've cast a wide net to get schools interested to see who wants to participate. And the idea is that we'll get some direct, valuable feedback from the students on different options that we can provide in our cafeterias, kind of see where they want things to go. Keep in mind, while that's a great idea, and it will be successful, there are guardrails as to what we can serve and how many times a week we can serve it. So pizza, can't be an everyday thing. But we're excited about that, and Tiffany was telling me this week that she's had some schools really express a lot of interest, and we'll bring others in as we can.
Chocolate flavored everything.
Just very quickly, it was said here in recent meetings, but I just want to compliment CNS again. Their social media is just excellent, and I find it really informative And I hope families do too, but they really have stepped up their game. And I don't know that I don't know that that's a correlation to the participation being up, but you'd have to convince me that it's not.
We think it is, and that's a great point. We think it is, and they are an energetic bunch over there.
Well, it shows.
Chair Swanson.
Thank you. I know the cold weather this week kind of was very interesting, so I was wondering, has there been guidance or procedures for schools that may experience cold classrooms? Were there a number, was those reported, and if so, how was the turnover, or not the turnover, but the response time to making sure that the classrooms were conducive to learning?
As far as I know, we got to everything in a timely manner. It may not be, minutes, it could have been hours, but based on what we had to deal with. And they typically come in early in the morning, principals, as they walk the building, or the custodial staff does, they'll initiate work orders, and then from that point, we take it and roll forward with it. Again, we use some of our staff and some of the outside staff as well. A lot of what we experienced Monday were things that just needed to be reset, maybe a power blip or something, but again, I think we got the most of it in a timely manner.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for that? All right, since everyone, I'm sure, read the meeting minutes from October, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Long-range capping recommendations. What? My favorite topic.
My name's on the agenda, but Susan Pulliam will be presenting today.
Oh, your name's on it. Go for it. Oh, yeah.
I'd love to take credit for this work, but certainly not.
Thank you for this opportunity to bring forth another step in our multi-year approach to our growth management. Thank you for having this opportunity to just share where we are with capping. As a quick reminder, today we're going to talk about the capping process. I understand we have a short timeline, so I will use my speed voice. We're also going to review the recommendations that we would like for you to approve in January, and obviously share where we are in the timeline in the process. As a reminder, this is all aligned with 4150 Policy Section B, temporary membership caps, and there is alignment to our strategic plan in the areas of equity-focused practices and operational efficiency services and facilities. We've shown you this throughout our planning cycle, so this is step 5 in our planning process. You recently completed step 4 by approving the 26-27 enrollment plan. Immediately following, staff started reviewing which schools still needed support from a crowding perspective. Just as a quick reminder, the way that we review this is we start by looking at the current capped schools to determine if any have been relieved. We look at our overcrowded schools across the district that might need additional relief, and then we present recommendations to you for review and approval. So that's what we're here for today, not the approval, just for the review. The approval will come in January. As a reminder, the assignment planning page that we created a couple of years ago hosts this information as well. I'll just call attention, it's part of step 5 on this particular site for families that are interested in learning more. So the capping process, similar to all of our other student assignment and long-range planning processes, starts with the enrollment forecast. We are actively working on the update. We'll bring that to you in February, so this is still the information from last year's, or this most recent year's forecast. And of course, the distributed growth that you'll see across the county, which will lend itself to our discussions today. At that time, around March, we also showed you what we thought the projected crowding would be for this school year, so this is just a reminder that this is that set of projections. And then, of course, we took into account what capital improvement projects might give us capacity across the county. And then, of course, we brought forward to you a enrollment plan for review and approval, and thank you for approving that. So what staff did during the review process, we start by making sure we know what all of our terms are. We know that this is a presentation we do once a year, so sometimes these terms don't stick in the memory. A CAP school is one that has restricted enrollment. The board has approved a specific number of students that can be served at that school, and once the school hits that threshold, we have to start sending the alternate school assignment that you have approved. We call that an overflow school. So the overflow school is that designated school somewhat nearby. I have to be cautious with that term of nearby, as proximate as possible with available capacity to support the school. We try to match calendars wherever possible, but you have seen some instances where that's not always possible. And then we also have crowded schools, which are schools that are kind of broaching on the line of maybe us needing to bring forth recommendations for capping, or perhaps we can look at other solutions.
As you're doing definitions, does capping mean every single grade is capped out all the time? Good.
Thank you for asking that. No, it does not. So what a CAP school is one that has a defined number of students that can be served at our elementary schools and our middle schools. We also look at that by grade level. So it just means that that preventative label is on the school. It's always best for families to contact the school because it is quite possible that at their student's particular grade, the school is not actively capping and the student could attend their base assigned school. Thank you for asking that. When we start looking at crowding, we start looking at what are the tools in the toolkit. And so we've talked about these a couple of rounds, but again, this is only a once-a-year presentation, so just a quick reminder. The first thing we look is, can we add capacity at the school? Is there new construction coming to the region? Can we do something like a renovation or facilities modification on the site itself? Can we add trailers? We know that that's not a preferred option, but it is a quick and less expensive than construction option. Can we flex to multi-track year-round to get that additional 25 to 30% capacity depending on the school? Then we look at whether or not adjusting boundaries is the appropriate option. Are there schools nearby with available capacity that could support the growth in the region? We continue to encourage choice for families in these regions, making sure they're aware of their magnet application school options as well as any alternate school calendars that might serve their families' needs. And really recently, we've started looking at the CAP as the last tool in the toolkit. We don't want that to be our first tool. Some things to keep in mind, class size legislation at the elementary level is still a factor that particularly influences the capacity restrictions at the elementary level. And then we also have our projected growth across the county, which I referenced earlier in today's presentation. There are some other things that not everybody knows about. There are restrictions from a permitting and zoning requirements about kindergarten and first grade, having first floor access. We have things about particular programs that have very specific space needs. Think about our pre-K programs, our special education programs, even our magnet programs. We look at whether or not the school has actively been creative in converting some of their program spaces to increase their capacity with some of the flexible capacity that's naturally built into the design of the school. Some schools are co-teaching, meaning in order to meet class size ratios, we're putting 2 kindergarten teachers in one room with more than 18 students, so we hit the ratio and the adult to student ratio is met, but that's still putting an excess number of students in a room beyond what we prefer. We're not violating fire code, but beyond what the board has said we prefer for our academic programming. And then of course you'll hear us talk a lot about core facility impacts, things like recess, lunch, carpool, all of those impacts on a facility, even toilets, to be candid. Just as a quick reminder, this is the location and attendance areas for the elementary schools that are currently capped. There are 17 of them as of January 7th, your most recent approval. There are 2 middle schools with ongoing caps, and then there are 3 high schools with ongoing caps. You can see there's a weight on one side of the county where the majority of the cap schools exist, and it's because this area has experienced a rapid enrollment growth almost nonstop for the last 15 plus years. So the next thing we do is say, all right, of our CAP schools, how are we doing? And what we realize is we have at least 4 elementary CAP schools that are doing okay. Recent enrollment plan approvals and new construction in these regions have really relieved some of these campuses. So we want to call your attention to these 4 elementary schools that we will be recommending that we remove the CAP from. In addition, we look at the middle and high schools. Not so much success at the middle school level. We're not quite there yet, but at the high school level, looking at the current demographics in the area and the changing demographics for this region, we think we're finally ready to recommend removal of the cap at Heritage High School. I feel like cannons should pop or something. So now we look at our overcrowded schools. So I just quickly went to the second slide, or slide 32. We looked at all of our any school in the district that was at or above 110% crowding based on the most recent second month's numbers, or PMR2 for those that are familiar with the term. First comes first, the 4 that you see highlighted on this slide, none of them have projected growth in their attendance areas. So they're stably big, just to say it differently. Adding capacity to these campuses is not really something we can do. They're either maxed out on their trailers currently or the property can't support it. And whether or not we convert those to multi-track, Kingswood is such a small school, there would actually be 0 capacity gain by way of example, and it is a magnet school as well as is Combs, which makes it much more difficult to convert. Lacey and Northridge potentially, but those communities have continuously shared with us that that's not a preferred calendar for the schools on those locations. So could we adjust the attendance boundaries? Perhaps. Maybe that's an approach we can take. So what we've decided to recommend as a long-range planning team is that for these 4 schools in particular, we would recommend monitoring the population. We're starting to do some space use analysis with our new long-range planning director who couldn't join us today, but she's on site at all of these schools doing a floor walk to see, can we use some space that's naturally designed into the building to hold off, especially since there's no growth in the area, to provide as much stability for these families as possible. And then, of course, we're also going to explore boundary adjustments to see if those are actually in fact warranted, and then those might be included in the next enrollment. The next set of schools you see here are highlighted because they do have projected growth in their attendance areas. So these are going to be not only a current concern, but a sort of exacerbating concern over time as the enrollment growth continues in their base attendance areas. We did look at an adjustment as to whether or not we could add capacity at Hodge Road Elementary, and right now we cannot. It is a single track 4, but it's also a magnet program, so putting it on multi-track would really confound the ability to provide that program equitably across all 4 tracks. Could we adjust the boundaries? We did do a boundary adjustment a couple of years ago. We know that Marshburn Road is coming online, and Pool Road, more impactfully, is coming online in this year. Would that provide the relief that's needed fast enough? So we're going to continue to monitor this particular school, assess its space needs. If you'll recall, our Spanish immersion schools can have a slightly larger capacity in their kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms because they have a special provision in state legislation. So we're going to make sure that our 115%, I don't think that accurately reflects that legal ability. And so we're going to do a space use assessment to determine how crowded the school truly is and whether or not it needs a boundary adjustment prior to 2030. Looking at Lake Myra, you've already made and approved the recommendation for it to be multi-track year-round to expand its capacity, and that will take effect for the 26-27 school year. We've been supporting the school in that process. Had a great information session a couple of weeks ago with their school community. So they're getting ready, and so our goal for this one is just to recommend that we implement that with fidelity, continue to monitor and adjust, and determine whether or not we need to do any further adjustments to the school. Zebulon Elementary, however, there is no solution on the horizon that's fast enough. The growth in along this corridor, along the 64 corridor going east, is tremendous and it's rapid. And the school is already at its most maximum capacity. We've done creative walkthroughs with the principal over the last 2 years. We have found every last classroom that we can leverage. They are actively using their restart status to have slightly larger classes, which isn't really what we want, but that's part of how they're managing the growth. So we are going to recommend that we cap enrollment at this school for the 26-27 school year. The next school in the region that will provide relief wouldn't come online until at least 2031, and that depends on whether or not you approve that school being in the capital. All right, so now where are we at? So the recommendations, again, we're just doing recommendations today. The approval we'll seek in January. The brief summary here is that we would recommend removing the caps from Alston Ridge Elementary, Holly Grove Elementary, Parkside Elementary, and Scotts Ridge Elementary, as well as Heritage High School. Based on the recent reassignments and the new capacity that's been added in the region, these schools can support their populations moving forward. In addition, we recommend adding a cap at Zebulon Elementary. Just as a quick analysis, since this was all on a different slide, all parsed out, you can see that we've had a nice reduction in enrollment and pressure on the schools. Also keep in mind that all of these capacities reflect existing trailer complements on the schools. So in some of these instances, we might actually even be able to start recommending trailer removal over time. Some more context for the conversation here. Heritage is a little bit different. It's not based on new construction. It's just changing demographics in the region. We are cautiously optimistic that this will hold and that we'll be able to keep the cap off for a sustained period of time. But as Glenn has shared in multiple sessions, any change in market in that region in terms of the housing market or turnover of population could bring us back to the table asking for a cap in the future. But the school feels like they can support the current enrollment. We feel like the growth projections that we're currently seeing are very modest to minimal, and that the school can support the enrollment without the need for a cap. For Zebulon Elementary, I talked through a few of these. Again, we've got significant crowding. They're already co-teaching in some classrooms. The enrollment growth is projected at least through 2034. We're getting an update soon to let us know if it's going to continue beyond that. The K-3 class size limits are being exceeded. They're using their restart status to accommodate that growth without having any needing to submit waivers. They cannot accommodate any additional trailer units on their campus. We will bring to you a max number in January, but we just wanted to get this on your radar. With Wakelawn Elementary, you'll see that it's already at a similar crowding rate. However, they don't have any trailers on their campus, and we are actively moving an 8-classroom and a 6-classroom modular unit over to the campus to give it 14 additional classrooms to not only support its continued growth, because these schools are so close to each other that the growth is impacting both of them in this region, but also to be able to support the overflow students. Our goal is for all of those to be in place for the start of the traditional calendar 26-27 school year, but we'll work with both schools if for some reason the certificate of occupancy is delayed. So what this would mean is a reduction of total of 17 elementary schools being capped to 14 if you go forward with these recommendations. The middle schools would stay the same, but the high schools would be reduced from 3 to 2. And then you can see the distribution of schools would change just ever so slightly based on the approved recommendations. One thing I want to draw your attention to, similar to conversations we have during the enrollment plan about stability rules, is that we have some very specific recommendations for this year's capping in support of what we're hearing from families and community members and principals about how to provide stability for families. We would actually recommend that none of these dates take effect until July 1. We're pre-planning far enough that we can allow families to have stability for the last semester of this school year without having to change schools or be pulled back or lose transportation if they're happening to be capped out now. It also provides those schools time to reorganize over the summer and make sure they have a sufficient number of classes per grade to support all of the students that live in their base attendance area. Similarly, for Zebulon Elementary, since the trailers won't be in play or ready for supporting students until the 26-27 school year, we also would ask that you not turn the cap on at Zebulon Elementary until July 1st. This would mean that any family that moves into the area prior to July 1 would be allowed to stay at Zebulon Elementary. Anyone who moves in after July 1 would be subject to the cap if the grade level can't support their particular student. Separately, we also knew this year would like to ask permission to continue using, I don't know that we have to ask permission, we're just planning to recommend that the schools that are getting their cap removed based on some recent experience keep using the double address verification process that cap schools use for at least 2 years, so that we don't have a huge onslaught of new students coming in. It's just to make sure that the students are properly domiciled in the attendance area for the school and that we don't have too much pressure coming onto the campus. In addition, that also means offer to purchase contracts would not be allowed until the family has actually moved into the home. They have to establish their domicile. That would just support a slow return for the base schools that are getting their caps removed. And then for Zebulon Elementary, we would basically start training the staff effective immediately once we get permission from you on how to do that double address verification. This will be a new procedure for them so that they can start that process in that last semester of the school year. So by July 1, they're ready to rock and roll. Of course, any cap schools that have students that are overflow, they would call them back during the summer months to say, hey, we've got a spot for you. At that point, the family could choose to take a transfer without transportation and stay at the school they've been assigned to for overflow, or they could come back to the previously capped school with bus transportation. And then, of course, Zebulon Elementary would need to inform their families effective July 1, hey, you're subject to the cap should we hit an enrollment cap for your student's grade level. We also talked with transportation to talk about the financial implications. Removing the caps at the current schools that we're talking about, the 5 schools, would be neutral on transportation, because not only would it sort of take away the routes that they're currently running, the students returning can all fit in existing routes. They wouldn't have to run additional routes to support those students, which is why this is the perfect time to do that. At Zebulon Elementary and with the relationship with Wakelawn, they do project it'll take 2 to 3 additional runs, but they feel they can do those with the existing buses. So maybe a double back or a triple back versus having to put a whole new bus online.
You say a triple back?
Well, I mean, that's probably worst case scenario, but their goal would be to be able to use their existing established bus routes and just extend them or add a second run to one maybe that isn't doing a second run. So that is a cost from an hours perspective and potentially for a time on bus perspective, but it doesn't require additional drivers. So quick summary, we're recommending take the 5 caps off effective July 1 for Alston Ridge Elementary, Holly Grove Elementary, Parkside Elementary, Scotts Ridge Elementary, and Heritage High. Adding a cap for Zebulon Elementary effective July 1, which would then maintain a cap at 17 additional schools that are already on the list. And so with that, just a real quick timeline. So we'll come to you on January 21st at the board meeting for final approval. And then we'll start working with our schools immediately and our transportation department and any academic departments. We are talking with Ms. Smith, the area superintendent for the Eastern region, about making sure there's support between the two schools. Since the relationship between Zebulon and Wake Lawn, we'll be sharing all of those students so we can think proactively about how to support all the students in the region. And then we'll come to you later in the year with other presentations related to long-range planning and student assignment, such as the forecast, the other utilization concerns for 28-29 school year, and then, of course, we'll come to you in May for our initial discussion on the 27-28.
On slide 42, I just want to make sure that no one is confused, because you have recommended adding cap and you have it over Wake Lawn too. And I understand that it's the overflow.
Gotcha.
But I do not want people to misinterpret that.
Thank
So you
you.
just mean Zebulon.
Correct. We recommend adding the cap at Zebulon Magnet and designating Wake Lawn as the
Wake
overflow.
Lawn will not be capped.
Correct.
Okay. Any confusing questions coming around? Dr. Ing?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And Heritage High School, it'll be interesting. I would love to have a follow-up report on that once we got the, bring back of some of the students and see what the dynamics is. We're losing or having a decreased market share in that area. Maybe having this school uncapped will bring some of those folks back, and I'm really hoping that.
Yes.
The other question I have is, the other comment or question I have is regarding the magnet designation for Zebulon. How does that impact the application process and the load of, how do we decide how many people we're going to be able to bring in as a magnet designation?
Yeah, and so as part of a magnet school, we designate a set number of seats for magnet students. So we'll continue to do so because it is our goal to try to attract families to that area. However, with the location of Zebulon, it being in the east, is generally not geared towards asking for students from other parts of the county. It's more to try to win back their base. So this is still that same target. So we'll be looking for kids from the Zebulon base first instead of taking additional students.
So the stats will not change?
Correct.
Yeah, we don't anticipate it to.
The ratio of magnet to base would
Yeah.
probably be relatively maintained.
The application numbers have been pretty steady over the last several years. If anything, we're starting to see an increase in base students coming back to the school,
Yes.
which is the goal of the program.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much for getting all of that. That was very good.
I was told to go fast.
I just asked, and I know I was asking about this, so I'm just going to ask a little bit more. Rather than putting trailers on for Wake Lawn to accommodate these students, two questions there. Like, what is the cost to do that? I know you mentioned it's not the same, like single classroom trailers. And what is the difference for the numbers in students if it's multi-track versus having the trailers? Like, how does that impact the school?
So generally, you see about a 25 to 30% increase in capacity when you change from traditional to multi-track. So it's roughly about 200 seats, I think, depending on the school size, from a 700.
At Wake
school.
Lawn, Zebulon is a smaller campus, so it'd actually be an inefficient
Yeah.
suggestion in terms of we'd be lucky if we could get the full 20%.
And it would cost us additional local dollars to run a magnet program on the multi-track year-round calendar, because when teachers are tracked out, you'd have to have a teacher to teach those magnet programs. That comes from local funding.
The cost of moving the trailers, I'm going to look to my colleagues.
Yeah, we're still in the preliminary portions of the design work, but the current probable cost is about $1.8 million to move both of those trailers to that site and make them operational. There's two
Cumulative or,
trailers.
okay.
Yeah, that was, I'm sorry. that was-
Quote, unquote, all in?
Yes.
Yeah. It's an 8 classroom unit and a 6 classroom unit.
Okay.
And
And we
some
have to
other
move
things.
them later, so that's times 2?
So in this case, the goal would be for them to be here just until the new
Right.
schools in this area come online, and then at that point, we could assess if they're needed somewhere else, or if we can
Take
Sell
our
them.
fleet, yep.
and take them out of the fleet.
So that's less costly than changing it to multi-track and having teachers on for all year?
I think it's less disruptive, in a way, because when you talk about changing a calendar, that's pretty disruptive to families, as you've seen when we tried to change the calendars for Pleasant Union and North Forest Pines, thank you.
Right.
So we feel like this is a better long-term play because with the projected growth in the area, I'm not going to rule out multi-track. It's just, I think this is the first step in that process, so we felt like putting the trailers there now, and then it gives us the option to go multi-track later.
Okay, and this is just for the 4 years while we're waiting for the new school to be built?
That's the plan, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and you said you met with the families, so the feedback is more
When we
in that
engaged the
direction?
Eastern community and asked about how they did for us to manage growth, it was with very limited support in their community for track out care.
Right.
They were very clear that if we can stay traditional, we would prefer to have, trailers or something like that and stay traditional than to go multi-track, because our community just has a hard time supporting us and having multi-track track out care. I know you're partnering with some of the community partners and municipal planners to try to expand we're letting them know we're going to have track out care in this region over time. So they're on notice, like Myra's going to be the first, and they're already partnering with a local YMCA unit to try to expand access there, because they've been supporting some of their track 4 and modified track out care, but having to do all 4 tracks is going to be new for that region.
Yeah, childcare is definitely out in that eastern region as we're growing so fast.
Correct.
We really don't have a lot of childcare for people there.
No, and that's why we thought this would be the more stable option to bridge the gap between both of those eventualities, getting more track out care for students as well as getting extra capacity online.
And it's within a 5-6 mile down the same stretch, right? It's not-
Waycon and
they're not-
Zebulon, they already share similar after-school partners. They both are serviced by the Boys and Girls Club. They both share their community partnerships with like the local Parks and Rec and that kind of stuff. So they are overlapped community-wise to begin
They're on
with.
the
Different
same
from some
size.
other regions that we've been in where we've had to cap schools.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And just to clarify, the feedback that we got from families was part of the enrollment plan process, not specifically
Right.
geared towards Zebulon families as we collected this feedback.
We talked to we went to an Easter Lake. We had an Easter Lake session.
But it wasn't specifically for
No, we were
Zebulon.
talking about this.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we brought up this growth in this region in Wendell and Zebulon, and we specifically asked. So yes, it was specific to this area.
Yeah, I think everybody in Zebulon really knows
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
growth
Wendell
is just,
too. Yeah.
yeah, in both areas, so close.
And Nightdale's not far behind, but they've been doing it sooner, so.
Thank you.
Did you say where the trailers were coming from?
Say again?
One will be coming from Middle Creek High School, and one unit will be coming from Leesville Road Middle. And then just while we're here, additional units similarly will be added to Carver Elementary to bridge the gap between now and the opening of Marshburn Road Elementary. But that won't require a cap.
What did you say about, can you?
Carver Elementary will also receive, in the next 18 months-ish, will also receive a similar complement, an 8-classroom unit and a 6-classroom unit, so that it can absorb all of the growth as we wait for Marshburn Road to come online. Because its attendance area is going to be largely impacted by the opening of that school.
We're hopeful that'll be for the 27-28 school year.
Okay.
They have sufficient capacity today, but their growth is also skyrocketing.
Any other questions? My last question was, when you have schools, this is for my Lacey families.
Oh, yes.
When you have schools, when there's not really any projected growth, are you looking at multi-year trends then? Or is it just,
Yes. So we're looking at past data as well as those forecasts that we share with you. We actually, you get a snippet here, but what creates that 10-year projection that we see on the growth chart. So for those 4 schools, they either have no or declining growth.
okay,
So their memberships are looking as if they would either be maintained or start to actually decrease over time. So that's why we're recommending a more stabilizing approach of they're already managing this enrollment today. So what are they doing? How can we support them? Is this something that can sustain? And if it can, then we might support them in using some of those extra classrooms to support their grade levels. Well, maybe someone's on a cart. But if we can do that for 2 or 3 years, avoid a cap, avoid a multi-track, and then the population settles into its space over time, that would be much more stable for the community.
Thank you. Thank you for this. My question is maybe more directed for Mark. How are trailers chosen to be moved from one campus to another?
It's a huge group. We all get together that talks about which schools can afford to lose them, that won't need them for long-term growth, which ones are owned versus leased. We try to only move per owned units. That way we're not extending leases that are costly. So we are looking at schools that have had a settling. Maybe they've had new, for example, Middle Creek High, Delta Grove is opened, Willow Springs opened, Fuquay Varina High got a renovation and an expansion of capacity. So the region is now good. And so they won't need those long-term. So we look at the schools that won't need them long-term, that currently might just be using them for elbow room, if you will, but not necessarily as a space need, and that are in good condition, that we own. And in this case, we were looking for ones that were modular units versus individual trailers, so that we could provide slightly better sense of, security for the families that will have their students in those units, because they'll be in a modular unit versus individual trailers. That has a little bit better programming for the school and for the principal to support students.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So it's good. And it's also in line with other things that this committee has asked us to do, which is reducing our overall complement. So we may be shifting, but we're also reducing off of those campuses that don't need them anymore.
Trailers would have been a topic that we would have talked about at the board retreat had the board cooperated. But we will bring that back to you at a later meeting as well.
No other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll leave
All right, so Livian Magnet, so Livian, this one in particular, board members, this is going to just be a presentation. You're going to get small group opportunities to ask as many questions. Anything you want to discuss will be as much time as you needed in small group for this presentation. This is more of an information-only presentation. Good, you guys can, is Elizabeth coming up? Because she was...
You want me to sit?
Where's running?
And thanks. And also a question about the mobile classrooms. We're also going to bring that up in the CFP introduction presentation after this. So we'll get even maybe a little bit double coverage on that. We have two pieces of information. And Sandy, if you can show the other attachment, which is the revised 2025 attachment. And then we'll come back to this one. Keep going. Okay, it doesn't look like you have it on there. Okay. On the assembly, there's two attachments. One's at 2025. It says revised 2025 12-10. That has the pros and cons. There we go. Pros and cons. And then we have another sheet, another attachment, which is the basically the cost. It's an option budget summary PDF that covers the cost. And so we'll cover a little bit of that in this discussion here. We also have a video that's available on the FD&C website. It was too big to be able to put in. What we had hoped to be able to do is to show you the video. However, it's too large, and plus it's 27 minutes long, so that's probably better for you all to be able to watch at home at your leisure. You can rewind and listen in case you missed a particular point. To help people find that, it's a Wake County Public Schools System.net, so WCPSS.net. Hover over About Us, and then click on Facilities and Operations, click on Facilities Design and Construction, click on Active and Planned Major Projects. Finally, I'm getting there.
No. Email us the link, and then let's make sure that there is a clear way for people watching this to know where it's at.
And that is really for the public, who is watching, so that they could access it.
Well, perhaps if there's a way to put this on the main page.
We'll make a shortcut URL for it.
Thank you very
Just a couple
much.
minutes.
Appreciate it.
I'd say the video covers the history of the process, the approaches, and some of the options, and the rough order magnitude cost. So please, I encourage you to watch the video. So project approaches, we were asked to look at 3 different options. So we have a renovation option, we have a replacement option, which is replacement of the existing building location, which is near East Lenore Street. And the third option is replacement of the existing building at closer to the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard side of the campus. Again, pros and cons are covered in the video. The budget and the rough order magnitude costs. So our project budget is $140.69 million. Difference between project budget and construction budget. Construction costs and construction budget is a subset of the project budget. So we have other costs that factor into the project budget. So when we talk about construction costs, you'll need to add in additional costs. What we expect is other costs to be would be what we call in the industry soft costs or owner costs. That's geotechnical subsurface explorations, commissioning, traffic impact analysis, moving costs, furniture and equipment costs, those kinds of things. What we currently expect, we're holding a number of about $7.5 million for just those costs. So the cost sheet that's above, there you go. And again, you'll want to look at it at your leisure. But those are construction costs that's provided by Balfour Beatty. And they are the CM on this. These approaches have not been designed. So again, this is rough order magnitude costs. It's not based off of a takeoff sheet or anything like that, so it's not that kind of detailed. Whichever route, whichever approach we pursue, when we get into the design phase, we will be going back and forth with the AHJ, which is the authority having jurisdiction. They may add requirements to the project, and so we, of course, will have to be factoring those in. And those conversations happen after we pick the approach. Let me talk about the approaches that you see up there. Option 1, which is renovation.
We can't see anything. Can you go to the renovation of the options 1, 2, and 3 and go through that slide deck? Because nobody can see that.
Sure.
It's on their computer. It's not
Okay.
having people here.
This looks like, okay, if you go up, that's slide
Or
4.
at the top of this one. Thank you so much. And just walk through the 3 options, please. That
Yeah, keep going up.
board members can take apart with questions and comments and stuff.
There we go. So this is option 1, which is renovation of the existing building. For the most part, we would expect that the scope of work would be a great deal of life cycle type work. And we would be kind of running a fine line between potentially additional scope of work that AHJ may require. So this particular rough order magnitude cost is about $1.3 million. And again, the video and these slides attachments will cover more in detail the items that I'll cover right now. But this particular option is within budget. And as you note, the oldest building on this campus is from the early to mid 50s. And I don't want to get into the pros and cons on each of these, but we would be keeping the existing buildings, and that you would have 1950s structure and for some of those buildings. As I mentioned, largely life cycle scope, which life cycle would include potentially replacing the roof or many of the roofs on this, replacing HVAC systems, fire alarm systems, intercom systems, those kinds of deals, those kinds of things. Also mentioned that this campus has been added on to many times over the years, so there's many different generations of construction on this site.
Can you walk through phase 1, 2, and 3 and the cost?
Yeah, so phase 1 would be, the first thing that would have to be done is the site would be prepared. We would then look at constructing essentially a new school. It would be a mobile village and many of the buildings would be modular. And then also looking at a pre-engineered building, which would be like a Butler type building. So in combination, we would build and assemble both of those. When I say essentially we're building a new school, we have to have everything for the new school. We have to have parent drop-off, we have to have parking, we have to have sidewalks, we have to have whatever kind of covers are going to be required. And all that would be factored into the construction cost. After we build that, we would be moving into that campus. That would then allow the contractors to move into, that would then allow the contractors to demolish the existing building and then start the construction of that new building. As we finish the construction of the new building, we would then move out of the mobile classroom village, and then we would be demolishing or relocating the mobile village, and then we would then convert that back to fields. So the rough order of magnitude cost includes those activities, and what you would have on that is 2 moves by the students and staff, and the contractors would have one time, one phase for the construction of the new building. So if you go on down, this is where okay, so option 2 is where we would, this would be building the new school on the existing building footprint. So we would have to do the same thing as far as we have to build. We would have to do, I just gave you option 2 on the last one, so sorry about that. The option 1 was the renovation, and we would be renovating. So option 2, I just told you, my apologies for that. But option 3 would be where we would not have to build a temporary school, we would not have a mobile village or Butler building. We would just we would raise the grades on the lower ball field site, so we'd raise that elevation, and that would be much more in alignment with Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard elevations. And that really comes from one of the concerns heard from the alumni group, that was an issue. And this cost includes that. So site work would include raising those grades. It would then include building the new school, to include the drop-off parking lots, all the connections, sidewalks, pedestrian connections. We would then complete the building, we'd move in, and then the contractors would have free reign of the existing building to where they would then tear that down, and then they would repurpose that into the ball fields. So hopefully I didn't go too fast on that, but that covers the 3 options. So option 3 is $121.8 million. That is within the budget that I mentioned earlier. That also is within the budget when you add back the soft costs or the owner costs. Option 2 was over budget. It was 140.
7, it's back up there.
Yeah, 147.97 million. That's construction costs only, so we then have to add back the owner costs and soft costs to that. So hopefully, again, that wasn't too fast, but I was trying to be very quick.
And for those watching and for my colleagues, the other document that we could not see because of the size of it, has a breakdown. Because what we're getting here is information that most of us haven't seen, particularly as it relates to the mobile village cost. So it's immediately important for me to insist on staff breaking down those costs because it's significant costs. They break down everything, all the costs for this project and this is for the public too, on the other PDF. And so I just encourage everyone, all the stakeholders to look at what's here, what staff feels are pros and cons, because that's the staff's perspective, the costs, the video, and like I said, board members are going to get every opportunity to ask and pick apart and whatever they want to do with this in small groups. We're looking at the beginning of January for that. I asked Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, I think that the time we were looking for the small groups is in January. So we just need to make sure we schedule to where it lines up with the board members that are going to be in each group. So yes.
The goal of this is to give every board member, give us another 48 days of community feedback, which lines up with the superintendent's plan, because I know you want to talk about what you're doing?
Yeah, and so we are going to have multiple opportunities for the community to get feedback. We have 2 dates to meet with the alumni. I have multiple dates to meet with alumni from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'll also be meeting with the staff and the principal, and also opportunities for parents and students that are currently enrolled in the school. And then the last meeting that I will have in February, and this could actually occur at any point, I was looking at doing it in February, I think it's either the 7th or the 8th, to really get feedback from the community about what they feel would be a proper memorial recognition of Lincoln, regardless of which option that the board chooses. So, and I know, Chief Lou, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we posted all of those dates on the website in terms of the engagement that I plan, correct?
We did, and I'm going to check, and if it's not, give me a minute.
Okay.
Ms. Edmonds and Ms. Rice, very quickly.
So I know you sent us a shorter video link. Are we going to move that video to a more prominent place for the public, like the home page, maybe down at the bottom where we have several different blocks, news or something?
Yeah, we can add it to the homepage. You should also be aware that we are emailing updates, and so after this meeting, we'll email an update to all staff at Lincoln, all students at Lincoln, and then Dr. Taylor has a separate listserv with community members that he'll update them.
And then a second question.
Directly to them.
I saw a date of January 8th for community feedback, and you're saying there's 2 others in the...
Yes, ma'am. I've identified 2 different dates, and right now we're just trying to make sure we get the right location. Then we should be able to push that out hopefully before we go home for the Christmas break. But I wanted to have 2 different opportunities for the alumni to be able to give feedback and have those sessions where they can ask questions and go through the presentation that we have.
Well, and I've marked my calendar because I have not been to any of these community forums yet, and so I'd like to come to one, so that's why I was asking.
Absolutely.
Ms. Rice first, then Ms. Gordon.
In reference to the board having our opportunity to ask questions with these 3-on-3s, is that what we're doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Are these virtual?
Whatever you need it to be.
I need to be virtual.
Yes, absolutely. Ms. Gordon.
In reference to the small group discussion and question time that we're going to have, can I also ask that we get some type of record of the community feedback from alumni?
100%. So the goal is to bring this back in February, the first part of February. We haven't settled on, it's going to depend. We want to give all the board members and the superintendent an opportunity to get feedback. And then we were going to have a public discussion about this as long as it takes. So we're definitely going to get that prior to any decision making that goes on.
Okay, thank you.
100%.
I appreciate having the community feedback, and I have not seen the video yet, but does it cover how each one of these options being, a different approach, does it get into how it preserves? 'Cause that was originally like the feedback that we were hearing, preserving the history of it.
It does
it
go
get
into
into how
history.
each one, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Mr. Crozier, you want to join us at the table? Because we got some magnet application questions. So part of this too is that the magnet application deadline will get here before we've made a decision on this. Parents would like to know what should they be doing, because they're going to make decisions based on what our decision is potentially. What are we doing to give some flexibility there?
So what we're going to do is similar to what we did with Wake Young Men's and Wake Young Women's families when they went through a change kind of around the same time period. Existing families, they can submit a transfer request to go back to their school if it's a base school, if their base school is capped, and they're existing at the school right now, they would be eligible to be capped out. So we go through that normal process. If the school is not capped, they would be allowed to be transferred back to their base school. For students that are applying right now for the magnet seat as an incoming 9th grader, 10th grader, or 6th grader, 6th, 7th, and 8th grader, they would be able to go back to their school that they came from. So we would open that up, once that hardship transfer window comes.
They'd be able to go back to their base.
They can go back to their base school, yes, that's correct.
On student at...
Or their existing school. So if they're a 7th grader or 8th grader applying for their non-base, we would allow them to just go back to their existing school.
That makes sense. Ms. Rice, for this topic. Yeah.
Yes, this topic. A question around our magnet process period with Ligon itself. We currently serve 60% of Ligon is magnet population. Have you considered some things that you're doing so that the school, that the community with around that space will be able to have more seats open back up for that school as this change takes place?
Are you talking for base families assigned to
Yes.
the school? So base families assigned to the school, they all have a seat at the school.
No, we have currently 60% of Ligon Middle School is magnet.
Correct. Those are
So-
families that come from other parts of the county.
Absolutely, we're aware. I'm asking, if we only have 40% of the base at Ligon, are we doing more to open up more of the base at Ligon
To
than we do
increase the
magnet?
base attendance area?
Yes.
We are not looking to increase the base attendance area. We think the balance right now is a good balance for the school's long-term health. As you continue to increase that base attendance area, it will create an imbalance with the socioeconomic status of the school, and it'll make it harder long-term for them to maintain applications over time.
At 60% is what you say is best? Is that what we're saying?
I'm not going to commit to a particular number because I don't know the 60% off the top of my head, but I would say the balance that we have right now is an appropriate one, and so we'll continue to look at that. But we can come back to you with additional numbers.
Well, yeah, that was the latest number that our principal gave us, so that's how we know.
As a follow-up, we're talking about magnet families having a choice to go back to the school. What if a base student, what are we going to give them some flexibility if they don't want to be in a particular option here? If it ends up in Robles and they just, what options would they
So
have?
we continue to follow policy 4150. So, whatever the criteria that we have for selecting or granting transfers, we would look at that. One of them happens to be space availability at the school, so we'll just continue to look at that and operate through policy 4150.
Right, and like I said, this is a commitment from the facilities committee that however long the questions take in these meetings is what they take. And if there has to be a follow-up meeting, in January, I want to make sure all board members have ample opportunity for this project to answer and get all their questions and concerns answered. Chair Swanson.
Thank you. I'm also not sure we can discuss if it's appropriate to have this as a work session as well as we move in, just to ensure that if folks can't necessarily make it to a committee meeting, that the work session is also an opportunity for all voices of the board to be able to participate in this discussion.
And I will say that the depending on when the 3x3 meetings are scheduled, we may or may not have all of the community feedback. So obviously, that first meeting in January the 7th, we'll have information, but a lot of those meetings occur throughout the month. So if 3x3 occurs after that, we'll certainly make sure that all the board members have updates on any feedback that we get. Go ahead.
Is there some type of like tool or mechanism that we are using to collect the feedback that we've gotten thus far?
So I'll let Lisa speak to that, because I do think we've been collecting some level of feedback, but I don't want to say anything that isn't accurate, so.
So I don't know that we've formally collected feedback. That would be the superintendent's community forum, and we have yet to decide the process for that. We're still working through locations. There's some concern that some of the locations at Ligon might have accessibility issues. So we're still trying to determine, and any feedback would be great. Do we do it at a church nearby, or do we do it at Ligon, and then work to make sure everybody can get to the location that we need in the meeting? And so that location will determine the process for gathering feedback. So we intend to gather input and collect it. We just haven't determined the mechanism yet for doing that.
Okay. Vice Chair Hershey, if I can share, we were talking about feedback. The 4 meetings that were conducted, I wasn't sure if Mr. Strickland's team had their meeting minutes, or that they took minutes for the 4 meetings that were had up into the West Millbrook meeting that we took. So they had 4 meetings prior to. My assistant also took notes at the YMCA meeting, just so that we can hear feedback, and then there were things that community wrote down, so I wasn't aware. I know I asked for information of the meeting minutes of the previous 4 meetings that they had, so I don't know if the facilities department has these meeting minutes.
My expectation is that we'll get all the, whether it's meeting minutes or information collected from those meetings, needs to be available for us. Ms. Edmonds?
Are we not collecting feedback online?
Not good.
So that's normally what we do is when we have a community type forum, we will collect information there, and then there's usually a portal where they can share additional questions that we might have after the meeting, sort of like we did at Durant Road. There was an opportunity for them to be able to share. So we want to, because what I recognize is that when I have a meeting to share information, I'll be there as long as I need to be, but you obviously reach a saturation point. You're not going to be there 12 hours, so we do want to have an opportunity for people to share any additional questions or comments or information they want to share that we don't have an opportunity to do during the session.
So that would take place after, say the community meeting on January 8th. Additional thoughts could be submitted digitally, but not prior to.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I haven't actually thought about prior to. I mean, I know we've done that on occasions, and that's probably something we can think about.
Yes. I think this was the presentation, and then the communication would go after this presentation. We haven't discussed doing a thought exchange. There's the alumni meet in person, and so I think we haven't discussed supplementing that with it.
I certainly don't mean to suggest it would be instead of, but
yeah.
I didn't know if...
Choice wants. Yeah, because I think it's like...
So I think we also have to be mindful of folks are not going to always utilize technology. They're not going to utilize talking points. So I think we have seen that and tried that in the past. I think the biggest piece is, if there's folks have sent us emails with their thoughts and suggestions. So I think that's also an applicable opportunity as well. But I just think we need to be mindful of the demographics and the families, that not everyone's going to have access to technology. Not everyone's going to know how to use a thought exchange. And I attended Ms. Rice's community session, and I think that community preferred having in-person dialogue versus this. So I do know as we go through this, we're not going to satisfy 100% of the folks, but I think we have to do what is best for teaching and learning long-term versus, I'll just leave it at that. It's just keeping what's best for the overall picture of the community, of the school community, but keeping teaching and learning at the forefront.
And Ms. Edmonds, what I'll add to is, and I like the recommendation, but one of the things I really try to do is be transparent with any and all information that we have. And so I'd like to think I've got some good positive feedback about that transparency. And they've been very appreciative of everything that I've been able to share. But that is something that I will kind of talk with the group that I'm talking with now is, will they want an opportunity to be able to share something in advance? But the idea is to make sure they have access to everything that we have access to, and that we're completely transparent in that. So there will probably be some that will want to submit information prior to, but I agree with the chair that I think they want to have that authentic conversation there. And so I just want to make sure that all of those possibilities that they look for, we do our best to give them all of those chances.
I don't object, I just was asking about.
I think it's a good idea, and as I think as the chair said, some won't use that technology.
Sure.
And there are going to be some that are twice as old as me, can run circles around me with the technology, but we'll just give them the opportunity. But great suggestion.
Any other comments? All right, let's move on. Thank you. I hope this is helpful for the public as well, because I know I was operating largely in the blind about potential options for Ligon. By the way, while they're transitioning, I did find it extremely helpful to go to the school for 10 minutes. And the facilities chair just there. I'd been on the fields, but never been on the field. So it was extremely helpful to spend 10 minutes walking it real quick. All right.
The comparison chart.
We're in good shape. So, we have a few extra minutes for this, for some questions, if there are some. But board members, you're also going to be getting a small group extended session on the CIP. And they're not going to, I don't think they're going to get into all of it, but it is extremely worthwhile. There is a ton of information coming to us. There's some excellent planning being done on the CIP project, through the CIP. And so I know board leadership has had it. It's really important that we have these small group meetings so everyone is up to date on what's going on, and so you all can weigh in on everything being worked on as well. Turn it over. I don't know who's doing this one.
So Glenn and I are going to tag team this CIP introduction presentation. And we heard then Chairman Haggerty this year say he really wanted a different CIP presentation and approach. So this is that different approach. So it's not the canned version that's been in years past. It's been over and over and over. So this is different. And so for this particular slide, the strategic plan alignment, most everything that we do, of course, is aligning with the strategic plan. Those are the items that we felt were where we were in alignment. And then the CIP historical context, much of the CIP in years past dealt with enrollment growth. A very large percentage of the CIP dollars were focused on that growth. So as we mentioned in the Board of County Commissioners joint meeting with the Board of Education, October 27th, I believe, we've been shifting that focus from new schools to existing schools. Obviously, we have significant needs there. This is what we're going to be covering in the CIP presentation. We're going to be discussing the upcoming plans on mobile classrooms. Even though we have talked a little bit about that already, we're going to be exploring and pursuing some efficiencies. And of course, we're going to cover that shift from new schools to existing schools. On that, Let's see. I think you've got this one.
So let's focus on new school builds. So this is something you've told staff to look at over time, and we're continuing to do so. Pursuing small-scale reassignments. What we talk about is what we've been doing already, business as usual that you remember it being. Smaller scale reassignments when we're looking at opening a new school or looking at trying to utilize a capacity in the proximate area to relieve crowding at some other schools or better utilize the efficiency across the area. Not looking at large scale reassignments when you talk about moving, thousands, tens of thousands of students. Pursuing calendar conversions, looking at, where we have traditional calendar schools and we have high growth areas, how do we utilize the capacity in the area? And you tasked us with looking at expanding the multi-track in order to gain that capacity in that area. And then recommending that all new schools, elementary and middle schools in particular, opening on a multi-track year-round calendar. Again, getting that extra capacity as part of that new build, growing into that, and then eventually over time converting that back over. All of that so that we can then utilize more dollars towards renovation projects, okay? So as you build less schools, you can take that same money and then put it towards the needed renovation projects that we have.
And that's a great segue. As we do more renovation projects, we do feel that we're going to need to look at additional swing space options, and those need to be located so that they make sense. Right now, we have the two spaces, and that's constraining. And so we do hope that we'll be able to open up some opportunities in the future.
I just want to add too, so in the past, we've used new builds in order to serve as swing space for schools in that particular area to renovate. And we were able to get away with that in a lot of areas because you had growth in a lot of part of the district. However, there were some equity issues. I look at like a North Garner. That school, because we didn't have any new schools built in that area and we didn't have any swing space options, we had to keep putting that off, and then we were just throwing dollars to put Band-Aids on the issues and concerns at the school over time until it got to a point where we couldn't do that anymore. And so it just becomes very difficult for the district when you don't have equitably distributed swing spaces around the district so that you can move a school, particularly a middle school or high school, into those spots. You're then hamstrung. You then have to do your renovations on site, which you can see from the Ligon presentation are much more costly and they take a lot more time for the district. So in order to be efficient with our dollars, we're going to seek out ways to increase the number of swing space options we have across the district, so that as we get to them in that renovation plan, we can do them at the time they're needed, not continuing to put them off and spending extra dollars.
Also, on that third bullet, utilize funding from program requirements. As we presented to the joint meeting in October, we were looking at relocating some funds, and we specifically noted real estate services. And there's also some discussion about potential technology. But those could be relocated. We're still looking at that. And with regard to real estate services, we're comfortable with the balance that we have right now. In fact, we're going to be coming to you in the coming months to reallocate some of those funds to other projects. And for next year, we do feel like, as we did this year, we had like $13 million that reallocated to other accounts. We think we can do the same thing for next year coming up.
So reducing mobile classrooms. So this is, again, something we wanted to talk to you about during the retreat, but just continuing to look at schools where we have ample capacity right now within the brick and mortar, where there's no future low, where there's low or no growth in those particular areas. I direct you back to that map with the arrows on it, so it gives you a good idea of, where we're expecting growth or lack thereof over time. Continuing to look for opportunities where we can be more efficient with the brick and mortar space. Can we look at our program spacing as Susan shared during the capping presentation? Also looking at when it's appropriate and cost efficient to add that flexible capacity to the renovation project. So adding those flexible classrooms within the building so that we can maintain that extra capacity we're gaining with the trailers, but all having it within the brick and mortar campus. And then again, continuing to explore opportunities to relocate services out of mobile units into other district facilities. And then how can we accomplish this? We have to continue following policy 4150. Identifying proximate schools that have the available capacity, but also align with our policy's goals. Exploring opportunities to create proximate capacity by introducing more efficient uses of our existing facilities. Okay? Looking at ways to maybe reduce programs under one roof, trying to find ways to better utilize the space that we have. And then continuing to seek non-traditional real estate opportunities, kind of like a Bobby Murray site or a Piney Plain site, those opportunities where we can take existing buildings and upfit them to be a school setting.
This is last year, this current year's executive summary of the CIP, just as an overview for, really for the public. It covers 7 years. The county sets the sum total, which we work to, and that's the annual sum total. It has 3 sections. The top section is new schools, the middle section is existing schools, the bottom section is program requirements. Per the county, we need to name the schools that will appear in the blue shaded columns. That's year 2 and year 3. And that's your fiscal year 28 and 29. And that, and just note those other schools that are listed at the top of those rows, those are already funded and those are well underway. So this is the new school options, the new school section. You'll see a brief summary of where those projects are that are at the top rows. And I'd say additionally, we need to identify TBD number 1 as part of this year's CIP. I would add that Morrisville High School, just as a point of an update, is will be opening to 9th and 10th graders in the year 2027. WESA, which is Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies, will be opening to 9th and 10th graders in August of 2029. And they'll have less than 200 WESIB students on that campus. And that WESIB, when it opens at its permanent location at Paramount Parkway, along with Parkside Middle School, that should open in 2029. And the middle school may be following a year behind that to 2030. That's not confirmed yet. This is the middle section. This is the existing schools section. Most of those schools that are listed at the top are already funded. I think that's, you'll see Wendell Elementary School is out into the future years. Cary High School, well, we have an update on the next slide for what this is going to be, but what you'll see on here is a lot of existing schools, TBD 1 through TBD 10. That really illustrates the focus, the shift to existing schools from new schools. This is the update of those particular schools that were already funded, schools that are in bid and award phase, design phase, and RFQ. And just some points to note on the, down at the bottom on the existing schools and swing space, as was, I guess the West Millbrook Middle School is a very good example of a project that had an ideal swing where you built a new school, students moved into it, then you tore down the existing school and repurposed that area for ball fields. It's the most efficient, probably the most cost-effective swing that we would do. Otherwise, if we're looking at multiple swings, it gets very expensive and disruptive to students.
Just to recap, with regards to new schools for this upcoming CIP executive summary that we'll be asking you to approve, we're looking for 1 new school to be named, for a new build, and then 2 renovation projects to be named.
Dave, before we go back to that other slide. Go back on that slide. If I missed it, sorry. Can you just talk about, we have those off-site swing spaces. What's the capacity?
Good question. It's lacking. I'll say that the Gardner ninth grade center, I want to say holds about
No,
400.
like 360, 400 at the most.
That's the small one.
Is a small.
Yeah. It's a small elementary, so you're looking like 3 and change. And then the Spring Forest site can hold a little bit
Can hold a
more.
little bit more. I think we've got a quarter of 50 in there. 'Cause we had Brooks in there, which was a pretty large, and then we had Wilburn in there, which was a pretty large.
So about 450.
Yeah. And so that, when our middle school, our small middle schools are running at 600, you can see these are not options for our middle school or high schools. So it becomes very disruptive, and it becomes more cost-effective for us to have larger swing space options.
Do they not work, though, because we know some families don't, people hate to swing, and so a lot of families don't swing, so do they not work?
So it does help. I mean, especially with our elementary schools, when you've got like a 600,
Well, I meant
Like
more for
Swift
the
Creek is like
middle.
about
To
600.
your point about the middle.
The middle schools will be a lot harder, because you couldn't put like a 900 elementary school at like Spring Forest, because you're expecting 50% of the population to not show up. That's asking a lot, and I don't think that's going to be something you can accomplish. We do tend to see a drop-off, certainly with, families opting out of going to the swing space, but they do come back when we have the
Right.
brand shiny new building.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that would be a little bit much to ask for a site like that. Good point, though.
And as far as program requirements, these largely affect existing schools. So definitely, again, that does help with the existing schools. And you have life cycle is one that people are very familiar with. But, I don't want life cycle to be the be-all to end-all. It doesn't make up for, M&O staffing or budgeting that might be short. So we want to make sure that things don't come to life cycle before their time. Mobile classrooms, PREM, technology, real estate, and SNAP, are all funded under the program requirements. Some more information on the mobile classrooms, and this was, what we alluded to previously about the board retreat on December 9th. I don't know that we need to go into that again.
And then exploring opportunities, to utilize our current facilities. So one goal of our magnet schools not only is to provide support to the district through reducing high concentrations of poverty, we're also going to continue to look to utilize these schools to incentivize students from overcrowded, more affluent areas. So it does provide support to some of our CAP schools in areas to the west and soon to be to the east at some point. We'll continue to pursue opportunities to reduce building square footage, looking for ways to provide relief to transportation and maintenance and operations. As we continue to try to reduce our square footage overall, that means if our maintenance and operations team has less square footage to take care of across the district, they can concentrate their forces on the existing schools that we have. And then exploring existing buildings to be converted to educational spaces, like we talked earlier about Piney Plains and Bobby Murray.
Before you go on, any questions at this point? Can we get, we've probably gotten it in the past, and I don't know, maybe jumping the gun, but can we at some point get a report on the amount we spend on leases and buildings leased, and just kind of get a comprehensive view of everything we're leasing?
So we want it for educational space and
Educational
or
space for this board. So, we think about long-term planning, and we talk about reducing building square footage, where we're, the benefits of leasing versus owning, or owning versus leasing, and how do we move programs that need to be moved or should be moved, or, if we have a 5-year lease somewhere and we're trying to do 20-year planning, how is that impacting? But I don't have a sense of how many buildings we lease or what schools.
But just to clarify, because we lease buildings for student spaces, and we also have our central office buildings that are leased, so do you want both?
Because
All of it?
the
Okay,
whole,
thank
we're
you.
responsible for, approving it. So It's just something that's never come to me,
Yeah, I think that'd be a great report because, there's school facilities that we lease, certainly this office, and I know leased mobile units are going to be a much smaller footprint, but I think those are the two big areas. Any school facilities throughout the district that we may lease, as well as this building. I want to say maybe $4 million a year we spend on leasing Crossroads, somewhere in that range. But I think that would be a good report for the board, so we can compare it.
Right.
I wanted to look at a little bit more about our first bullet point when we talk about the goal of magnet schools and reducing high concentration of poverty. I'm looking for at some point too to bring or to share better information of things that we learned from State Board Association through a different lens. I think we have this mindset that poverty is the sole breed of whether a school is successful or it's not, and that's not true. We know that it's not true from previous historical factors where we had all black schools and things of that nature where historically there was low poverty areas. But I think as we look at current research and research now, that does not necessarily, poverty does not mean low performing. And I think that there's a lens shift that kind of needs to happen amongst our leadership or anyone, right, in that process to think that that is the sole reason or the majority of the reason of why a school may not be performing at its peak or where it should be. It's more aligned, according to data, about being a trusted adult there. It's more aligned about the things that we even hear in numerous conversations. It's about the people that are in the building that actually believe that you can learn regardless of who you are, and then the staff having the skill sets that's needed to actually help you learn. It's more about our early childhood education being met prior to students coming into school. And so I think one of the things that's important to me, just understanding data and understanding information, is to reshift or relook at when we're talking about concentrations of poverty and lumping that into performance. Data does not show that that is the sole reason. We learned that with watching some recent data around that, but we just need to look at that a little bit more, whether staff already has information around it or not. Yes, that is some factor, but it's not the major deciding factor. And I show that we put emphasis that a lot around our magnet process to make it seem as if students can't learn if they're poor, and that's unfair and it's not true. I know a lot of folks who grew up poor and they're pretty successful and did well, and so we can look at a different shift or a different mindset possibly of what that looks like. For students who come from lower economic means, it doesn't mean that they can't perform well because they come from a place of poverty. And I notice in our information that we, kind of champion on that a little bit, but it's inaccurate information. It's not totally true. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's spot on point because we know they're what we call the 90-90-90 schools, meaning they're 90% minority, 90% free and reduced lunch, but there's also 90% proficiency. So those schools exist. We also recognize that school diversity has a really good correlation to how well students perform in school. But what we also have to be mindful of is that students, even if they are in a diverse setting, that they don't get lost in the averages. And I know that's one of the things that we've talked about. So this is part of all of that work that we have to bring together to recognize that when you are in what we call a poverty situation, there are going to be things that make learning more difficult. So we were at Wake Up and Read today, and so that was a great opportunity to talk about how we leverage things before kids get to school. But you're spot on point that we want everybody to know that because you're born in poverty, superintendent is one of those people, it is about how we make sure we're doing all the right things in that environmental setting, and knowing that if you're in that condition, if we don't do the right thing, that it can end up a certain way, but it's how we intervene in between. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that is one of the core tenets of our strategic plan, is to, erase those predictors and set expectations high regardless of where students come from and what their life experience may be.
I think is this the last slide for you guys done anyways?
Yeah, it's questions.
All right, so continue with questions. One thing that, we haven't seen on some of the CIP planning, as we talked about long-range planning. Piney Plains, Rock Quarry, Capitol Boulevard. I brought this up to Mark recently, that even if we separate those out and develop 20-year plans specifically for those sites, that's very helpful for the board for planning purposes. That way, we're not necessarily taking the CIP out 20 years, but those buildings, because we need to start with those buildings if we're going to make any progress. I would also encourage board members to bring up any programming or buildings within their districts. I'll give you an example of one that I would like some long-term planning on, and that's Partnership. We know that building is not sufficient to just endlessly be there. And so it may not be on the CIP, it may not require a CIP listing, but what's our planning there? What's our planning for, programming that might be at Mount Vernon Middle School and the Bridges program, and does that stay in there long-term? I have my own thoughts on those things, but my colleagues will have different programs in their districts as well, where are they at the right place indefinitely? Are we thinking about how we can move things around, be more efficient with our dollars, make sure we're serving the right areas geographically? Also, if we're going to do regional centers, what does that look like? That's something that we're going to need as far as long-term planning too. So as we build out this long-term planning, and I really can't wait for my colleagues to be in the small group because there's a lot there. These are some of the missing elements that I want to get to this year as far as putting that complete plan together.
And I'll just add, as we meet with you in smaller groups, I think it'll be helpful for you to help us provide that focus of what you want us to prioritize, because funding, as you know, becomes a huge contributing factor to the issues or concerns why we can't do certain projects at a certain time. And so as you talk about, like Rock Quarry or Bobby Murray, you're balancing that against the same funding dollars that we're going to have to do for a Partnership or some other schools. So just helping, get some direction from the board as to what you want us to prioritize would be great.
I would also add that not every school has to be named school through PREMP.
Right.
It could be that some of these projects are PREMP projects.
Yeah. But it's still, if we're not long-term planning, if I don't know what's happening with any particular program or school, it makes it hard to approve other things, and then we're just, and we're deliberate in our visiting Piney Plains and Rock Quarry, and I don't know what others, I know what some others thought about Rock Quarry, but we have to start working there, and that's been talked about for a decade.
But I'll say staff has got a really good idea of what we need to do, right? And we've prioritized it on our own. I think the hardest part is when you start naming schools publicly, then people start to get this feeling like, well, I was next on the list, and then not realizing that you could have another issue rise to, an immediate need, and that would need to bump that project and push it back sometime. The public doesn't really respond well to, hey, we were supposed to go and now somebody else is going to take our spot. So that's why we like that flexibility in the outer years of the CIP, but I do get what your understanding is, trying to have some sort of idea of what the next projects will be, and we can certainly provide a grouping.
Right, but I think it's important for us to say Rock Quarry's going to start getting a renovation in 2 years. That thing's, and we've got staff there, and I cannot believe some of the stuff I saw there. And I'm like, we have to do something better for our staff there. We have to clean up that site. I apologize to staff there that I didn't get out there sooner. But if we don't ever put it on a list and make it public and have that accountability, then we just keep kicking it down the road. And I, as one board member, do not want to do that. for some of these
And so
places.
Ms.
Ms. Caulfield
I
and
was just
then
going to
Dr.
ask, do
Taylor.
you want us to email you if there's particular?
Well, I think have the conversation in the small group. I'll be a part of those. I'm going to try to be a part of those small group conversations with everybody. It's kind of, making sure that they're all hearing everything I've already heard and not missing anything.
Well,
Like-
and to be proactive, that
Yes.
they know that it's actually
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah, definitely. You put me on it and send it to Dr. Taylor as well, and the chair. Yes, Ms. Rice.
Yeah, to piggyback off some of the things that you're saying, one of the things that I would definitely like to know as a board member is when certain decisions are being made that are going to come to us, to know the different changes that it possibly had taken, what was not to do their work or get in the weeds, so that we can know how to better understand the decision that we need to make based upon all the work that they've done as a staff to get them to that place.
I agree. Yes, I'm just going to agree with that wholeheartedly. Any other questions on this topic? All right, my expectation, as I said earlier, is that they will set up small groups virtually, in person, whatever preference is, or a combo, and full deep dive into everything they've done. That's all I got. And then, thank you, and then we have a little bit of more. Why not? Lottery fund. Did we win? Yes and no. Actually, this is good news, I believe.
Good afternoon, yes, this is good news.
Yes.
Wake County informed us that there's been a distribution of the North Carolina Education Lottery, specifically of their public school, public building repair and renovation fund. It's a part of one of 3 different funding mechanisms with the lottery. And we've got a distribution of $1,957,234.46. They're asking us to provide them direction on how we would like to allocate that funding. We're here to open that dialogue and discussion.
How much was it again? Can you just repeat the number since we don't have it on the screen?
$1,957,234.46.
Oh, it is on the 1.95. So yeah. And Dr. Taylor, is this something that is going to go through budget? Is that coming here? Like, what is, when you're asking for guidance?
So one of the things, I can do this. This is a new funding source from the lottery, if you will. It's been around probably since 2022 or so. And so districts have about $500,000 or so that comes into this fund every year. And so we have an opportunity to either use it or pull it up for a particular time. And so facilities has some recommendations in terms of how they would like to use that. And so that is what we'll be bringing forward. So it's not something that's necessarily has to be included in the budget. It's just lottery funding that we have, and we can include that as a part of.
Any restrictions on it?
There will be some restrictions in terms of the use of lottery fundings. I know, and David, you can speak to this, I do know that the commissioners do have to sign off on the approval of this funding that the county commissioner chair and the board chair, they agree on the use of that funding. So David, I'll let you share.
Sure. It's enlargement of classroom facilities, improvements to classroom facilities, repair of existing building components and systems of classroom facilities, renovation of existing classroom facilities, equipment for purchases for classroom facilities, and project planning design fees. What we were proposing was the quicker we spend the money, we always feel is better to spend somebody else's money first. The Fuquay Marina Elementary School is an existing project. It's underway. It is an addition project. It's also a renovation project. It meets all the criteria. We've talked with the county. They're 2 thumbs up, on using it for that. We used PREP money, SNAP money, and PREP, SNAP, and life cycle money So we would be able to free up, some money in any one of those categories. And of course, life cycle is a big subject, but we would have the option out of those three categories.
Just not to be redundant, but I just wanted to clarify, the reason it's coming to facilities is because it can't be used for programming. It's got to be facility related, correct? I mean, you just read off the list. So just wanted to make that clear for the good of the whole, and including viewers.
When do you need approval for
Well,
this?
we would take this to the Board of Education, and we would take it to the Board of County Commissioners.
When are you planning on I'm going to get Ms. Gordon in a second, but when are you planning on taking it to the Board of
If
Education?
there wasn't any issue at this meeting, there's no issue for us not to take it to the next available meeting, January 20th.
So that's what I was getting at.
So let me, because I think this may be what you're asking. Now, we're asking for the board to just give us permission to use it for those particular categories, or have you identified specific projects that you're...
It's the Fuquay Varina Elementary School is the project that we would want to be able to...
Thank you. I hear that you say that you've identified Fuquay Varina Elementary School, and I heard that you said that this money would then free up money in other areas. So then, I guess my question is twofold. First, how did we come about identifying Fuquay Varina? And then second, is it to be understood that that other money that it frees up will then help us bump up some of the projects the existing projects that we have?
Right, so we selected and proposed Fuquay Varina Elementary School, and it's really been one that we've been looking at for a while, to do. It meets the criteria, and previously, we were concerned that it wasn't going to happen fast enough. With the passage of time, that's no longer an issue. We are there, and that we would be able to reimburse the account. So we wouldn't be saying, let's expand the project by $1.9 million and do more there. Not at all. The scope of work doesn't change. We simply would be reimbursing the existing, some of the existing funds in that project.
And that project, unlike other ones, have more pots of money that are available that we could pick from, that if that being Prem, SNAP, or Life Cycle, that if we see Life Cycle needs 1.9 million, we can get that and put that into that project.
So then again, does that mean that the money that is recouped, we can then take that and support the existing projects?
Right, there's life cycle projects, PRIMP projects, or the SNAP projects, yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Yeah, Ms. Gordon actually asked my question, but I still need a point of clarity. I feel like it was asked, but not necessarily answered, about how did we choose. I did hear you say it's within the scope of how you all choose, but not necessarily sharing today how we choose. I know we've heard it before, but don't know if community need to hear it. But the other part I'm trying to understand is, are we still saying that this particular money, if you choose Fuquay as where you want to place the 1.9 million, that means we have, actually, that doesn't mean we necessarily have a free 1.9 million to do anything with.
What it does, and I think another question to ask. So ultimately, we have a whole host of projects that we fund. And so you're just saying that you're going to use the 1.9 million to fund something that was already there, and it actually does free up 1.9 million out of the bigger fund that we can put towards something else. And so what we have here is an opportunity to say it's a project that we had already funded. Let's apply this funding because it meets the criteria. And now it does free up the 1.9 million from what we already have as available funding to put towards something else. So you're
Right. Okay, sorry. And so then the other part, just for my clarity, just for sake of understanding, you listed certain things. Would this then be $1.9 million that we would have to fix, what's the word I'm looking for, around deferred projects, deferred maintenance?
That sounds like life cycle.
Okay.
Yes, the answer would be yes.
And would we be able to, or is that at some point in time, as you requested about buildings and things, would we be able to see an update on what you actually did with deferred maintenance issues, that we could see where that $1.9 million actually went within our deferred maintenance spaces that we so desperately need? Is that possible?
So I add this piece to it, and Mr. Burnett, you can also clean it up some, but the restrictions that come with this funding, it will free up funding that was already there. That funding is also going to have restrictions based on where it comes from. There may be fewer restrictions that's associated with this, but, I'll let you kind of make sure the restrictions of that, you can kind of share that.
Yeah, and those restrictions that I mentioned, that's NCDPI's interpretation of the general statute and what it can be used for. And so if it was deemed that, okay, let's put this in the life cycle budget, we would be able to say we're increasing that budget by $1.9 million, and then the next project, we would be looking to see if it's a whole project or a part of a project. I mean, if it's a $2 or $3 or $4 million project, it would be helping us get to that project sooner.
Chair, I'm sorry, are we saying that deferred maintenance projects are not covered under life cycle
No, they're,
within it?
I think what we're saying is under the lottery money has to go to a certain thing.
Well, I get that
And
part.
we get to
Yeah.
then we can take that 1.9 and put it in
Right.
life cycle, which
Right.
is deferred maintenance also.
Right, so my question, because I just heard, I think I heard you say that we still have to be cautious about what it can cover. And so I'm just concerned that, not necessarily, it's not a concern, I'm sorry, I'm just wanting to know, would we actually be able to utilize this money to do more deferred maintenance spaces versus staff just saying, no, we don't want to do the deferred maintenance, we want to do this project when we know we have tons of deferred maintenance issues that we need to take care of? Is this a way for us? So it's just a question.
Let me see if I get this. Are you asking for the board to give guidance for that additional 1.9 million after it flows to ensure that it goes to deferred maintenance?
Well, I think saying
And I'm
that
fine
kind of
with
puts us
that,
in the
that's-
weeds.
yeah.
I mean, I would like to say that, but I think that pulls us into the weeds a little bit, but I would like to share vision in reference to it, vision, and if we stick to our mission and making sure that, students can have, meet their full potential. They meet their full potential when we take care of some of this deferred maintenance. So they can go to bathrooms that work, and we create a better space of well-being in their school and move in that space. So if I can just refer back to our vision and our mission of how we need to utilize that money to help with the priority 3 of our strategic plan, which is better working conditions for our staff and students. That's all.
I'm going to piggyback on that. Is this going to be I know it's not going to be 1.9 million every year. Are we going to get a reoccurring $500,000 every year?
It's not the same amount, but it would be a recurring amount.
Now, how do we intend to deal with that? You're going to come to us every year and say we have $400,000, or as board members, kind of getting to what Ms. Rice was talking about, can we think about not making a decision right now, thinking about giving some direction of where we'd like to see that money go? Because I'm going to catch up with Dr. Ng at some point about his meeting, and we have talked about how do we, and this builds on exactly what Ms. Rice was saying, for some of these maybe projects where bathrooms aren't working or something, and potentially, as an idea, dedicating some of this money. I think it falls into what you said, directly in the schools to fix some of these smaller items that we would like as a board to see done.
Yeah, we can clarify with the county as to the amount that we would expect annually.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I myself would want to make sure that, it's great that we get this money for this particular school, but that we do need to reserve the money that we would have used for that for Fuquay Varina to continue to be used for deferred maintenance. I don't want it to be used for anything else, period. Because, we've deferred maintenance for way too long, and our teachers are, having a hard time in their using the facilities. The students are having a hard time learning, and I'm done. We need to, dedicate more money into deferred maintenance. And so any future money coming from this source has to be towards deferred maintenance.
Clear something real quick on the two different funding sources as we talk about deferred maintenance. Is that okay? Yeah. So deferred maintenance as it relates to life cycle replacement is capital. Deferred maintenance that might not be life cycle, broken door locks, things like that, might not fall underneath that. So that falls underneath your local county appropriation funds. So I just wanted to clarify the two different funding sources. What is capital, life cycle replacement, fixed asset related versus local county appropriation dollars.
Honestly, we need both, right?
Yes. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that on this lottery funding, it does go towards capital improvement. What could be deferred maintenance is those life cycle items, your HVAC and other capital projects like that. And then to clarify on the question, I have been in contact with the Department of Public Instruction, and the legislature does appropriate about $50 million out of this funding stream, and every LEA gets an equal portion of that funding. So we only get $500,000 of that funding when it's appropriated. And so this allocation, the $1.9 million that's built up in both the allocation plus interest that we've earned, once that's gone, there'll be another $500,000 that becomes available. And whether or not the decision is to use that annually or to let that build up for a larger project, I defer to.
And is that non-life cycle or life cycle for the passenger?
Life cycle. Life cycle, it's the capital side.
We're going to wrap up in 2 minutes so we can be on time for work
I
session.
just add one quick point.
Yes.
If that funding gets approved to go to Fuquay Varina, in order to move it out of that project, I have to take it to both boards. So you'll get a review at that time to see where that money, or our recommendation of where that funding will be going. So it's not going to be lost in the pot. It'll have to come back to you, to both boards to get approved where we put it.
So I appreciate the questions because I think it was kind of like the answers were answering a lot of what I had to say, but I think in total, and I appreciate the breakdown, if we can get a list, I don't actually think it's in the weeds. I think it's something that the public wants to see because they want to know that we're being accountable for the money that's coming in. So whether we use this 1.95 specifically for Fuquay and it frees up 1.95 of the money we had allocated, can we see that we're going to spend that on these specific deferred maintenance items that we have that list when we go to approve where it's being spent? So we know both are being done, it's just a matter of how you're labeling it. But the money that we're getting, if we're going to put it on this project, then we're going to take that same amount here and give a list of what we're doing. Can we get that?
Yes, and as Mark Cooney mentioned, you'll approve the budget transfers, but we'll have to do a little note and asterisk to say, 1.95 is going to go specifically to this, just to help you follow that.
I'll put that in there that you'll see this is previous lottery funding wherever we do it.
I think for me, it's more not so much about the lottery funding, but that to see that the work is getting done in all the schools, because we have so many schools that we need it in, that they're all being paid attention. Because this is taking that lottery money, and I think in the public side, it's all going towards one school. What about all the rest of us?
Right. So let me be clear on this, that as Dr. Engen said, we've got a lot of issues that have to be addressed. We've got tons of them, and we've got more projects than we have money. And so with this funding, it just simply says that the state is providing that lottery funding. That just gives us the ability to have flexibility with 1.9 million to address all of the things that we have. And so all those projects that we identify, we already have a funding source for those. That's going to include multiple schools. But this is just an opportunity to say that based on the criteria that they have set, we've got to identify a project. And so whether it's Fuquay Farina, whether it's, Heritage High School, it really doesn't make a difference. That we're going to have projects that meet that standard. It just simply says that we've got an extra 1.9 million that will probably have slightly more flexibility than what the lottery funding has. But we will absolutely bring that, make sure you guys are in the loop on that. And I think it absolutely shows to our public that we're using those funds to address needs that they know are sorely needed. And I appreciate this lottery funding being there because there's tons of lottery funding that they've supplanted. And so this does give the public a chance to see that their gambling proceeds are going towards what they're supposed to go to. What the press did
I think these issues predates all of us, and I think we can be very passionate about it, but I also think we have to put in perspective that we have a limited amount of resources from the county and from the community, and folks don't want their taxes to go up, so, we have to be very mindful of that. And so I think the work is the work, and I think we all have to do our due diligence as a board to advocate appropriately where that needs to be, whether it's on Jones Street, whether it's at the federal level, whether it's at the county, showing the issues. That is where the work is. And I know Mr. Hegarty at the time, I did some digging to allocate and to find this funding that was being housed there that is there. So I think we all have work ahead of us, and we do know that this impacts teaching and learning. But I think, again, as we transition into the next conversations, we have to be aligned on the work and understanding that although we are elected by districts, we have to govern as a whole. And so just because there's issues in certain districts, those don't supersede all. And I have some of the oldest schools in the county that have not had a renovation in years, but I'm not being at the table because I understand it's what's best for the whole county, what's good for Wake County Public Schools as a whole. So I just wanted to put that in perspective and not negate that although we are elected by, and Ms. Johnson-Hosser used to say this all the time to us, although we are elected by districts, we govern as a whole county. So thank you.
I think we'll wrap up on that. I think you heard from the board about what kind of the expectations would be when that money comes back around, and probably not to build a gold tennis court somewhere. Right on time, 3 o'clock, we are adjourned.
Thank you, sir.